you know that they are in Egypt attempting to stop him from coming to do a concert because he is leaning into the African centric concept of Kemet. And it went for, and then he sent me the Haruna said sent me the article so that I could read, and they talked about the fact that Kevin Hart is supporting a company known as Black Sands. They produce illustrated magazines or comic books, if you'd like to call them that. Now, I'm very familiar with Black Sands because I have been supporting Black Sands from when they had the first comic book. This was the first one that they had, the first Pharaoh, #1. I've had this for a while. And they also have come out with hardcover comic books. And as you can see in the Instagram live I put up, and you may have already seen it, the fact that he was on Shark Tank. And Black Sands presented their idea, and Kevin Hart supported them. And again, Kevin Hart having children and wanting his children to know the truth, in supporting them, supports the ideas that are being presented in Black Sands. But family, please allow me to take you someplace else, because I not only purchased from Black Sands this idea of Kemet, but they also have a series on the Orishas. 1, 2, and 3. This is West Africa, Nigeria in particular. Yoruba, if you want to get deep inside of it, in terms of the spiritual systems, and they now have comic books dealing with the Orishas. But hold on. Now you can understand why people are getting upset, because they're trying to hide the truth. Because not only that, but they also have Granada, which deals with the Moors. So they've got a series of comic books dealing with Granada, okay, the Moors, okay. So that's good. But not just that. You can see what's happening, family. We're on the roll. We're getting there. And we have to understand that, because this is going to get to the children. And once you get to the children, then you can get the message to them to help them understand. They have the Muntu warriors, okay? Muntu, the people, okay? A series, okay? And they have even more than that. But I have on order, which is interesting because I just placed an order the other day. They just contacted me and told me that it's on its way, of their entire collection. This is what Kevin Hart has done in supporting them, and probably his influence bringing other people that can support this this comic book series known as Black Sands. It's bringing attention. Okay, now Kevin Hart is going to Egypt. He's African-centered. He's talking about the Africanness of Egypt, and you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar tourist industry where there's a lot of people infested. We don't need to understand the fact that we as a people, no matter how great we may be in reality, and no matter how great we may feel about ourselves, the insecurity and ignorance of others who do not understand their role in the African tradition are fearful. And Kevin Hart is not the only concept that has created situations that they are attacking African peoples, African American people, foundational African, foundational Black American, however we want to call ourselves, the Moors and everybody else. They are now attacking. I have been attacked. But you see, with me, the more they attack, the more I realize how true what I'm doing is. And this is why the work that we're doing and what we're attempting to do to open up the eyes, it is not just the idea of Egypt being black, being African, being melanated. It's what they achieved. Because once we're able to embrace that concept, we will be able, because I know working with children throughout my life, throughout my career, and being a child myself, you are very impressionable. And even so much as telling a child in 3rd grade, slaves were taken from Africa and brought to America. That's not the way to say it. Because in a child's mind, if these people, Africans, were slaves in Africa, well, then it only makes sense that they'd be slaves in America. But if you say human beings were stolen from Africa, brought to America and enslaved against their will to do the bidding of somebody else for free, then children, even in the third grade, are going to say, where's my paycheck? Where's my reparations for not getting paid? So that what we're facing here now, family, is the world is now beginning to realize. Now, I know that there are a lot of people of a lot of different cultures, even China. China don't want to admit that the original people in China that brought forward the dynastic periods of China were black. Japan doesn't want to admit that the original shogun was the priesthood that was brought from Kush. Indians don't want to admit that the Harappa and the Mohenjo-Daro civilizations were formed by Kushites. Koreans don't want to admit that Africans brought Koreans onto the islands of Japan, met another African people known as the Ainu, and created what we today call the Japanese culture. Even in America, they don't want to admit that the original people were the Twa people over 100,000 years ago, coming to this part of the world. And so what we're facing, family, is this conflict with them. We, not with them with them, and then them looking at us. Family, once and for all, let's come to this conclusion. Egypt, what we call Egypt, which was a derogatory, which was a term that was taken out of the Greek word Aegyptos, Aegyptos, was taken from an African word known as Hikapata, Hikapata. Even the word Egypt is a contamination of the original African word Hikapata. This is us, family. We did this. But it's not important just that we know this. It's that we're able to understand this. In my book, Spirituality Before Religions, I have outlined in the early chapters Kush and the role that Kush played in establishing what we today call Kemet. Coming from the south to the north, we find evidence in Sudan or Nubia in a place called Kustal. There's an incense burner. We already see it. There's evidence of this pharaonic system in Sudan 15 generations, maybe 300 years before the first dynasty of Kemet. We then see these same Kushites now moving into the southern part of what we call Kemet, but north of Sudan, in Egypt, what we call, in a place called Edfu, or the Temple of Heru, which was the resurrection, the Son of God, the original story of the Son of God. And then from Edfu, they moved to Hikapata, and they established the first dynasty under Menes, or Menefer, a black man, an African man. There are visuals of him. There are carvings of him there. This is not something that we're just saying that we don't have evidence. We have the evidence. Multiple forms of evidence. And so it's important that we understand this. And that we understand that in our history, that if you go back and you do the research, it's there. But you've got to take it from many different areas. And then out of this, I decided to look at the spiritual systems of the world, and I took the Abrahamic faith systems. And what I did is I did research on them, and I came to realize that the Old Testament and the New Testament actually is Shabakistan. Just simple like that. This is us. We got this. We did this. The Old Testament is the story of Asar. The New Testament is the story of Heru, the resurrection of Asar, and that is the story of the Old Testament and the New Testament, but they broke it up into two parts because they created two different religions. Actually, it's the same people. It's fundamentally the same spiritual system, but it's just that it's geared a different way and it's expressed a different way, but it's the same story. One deals with Atum, the other deals with Aten. Same thing. This is us. And I'm at the point now where I don't want to argue with these people anymore because I want to get to our children. And I want to get our children to understand what's going on. And that's why I wrote the book, Shabakistan for Children. And all of it is in the link in my bio. But I also want to talk to you about the documentary that Harun Nesset and I developed when we went to Washington, D.C. You've all seen Chocolate City, which is the music of Washington, D.C. and the impact that it had. focusing on Marvin Gaye, the great soul singer. But also we developed the hands that built the pyramids, built the White House. And when I was there, I spoke at a venue, at a restaurant titled E-Life, Everlasting Life. I had a chance to do a PowerPoint presentation where I showed the migration of East Africans into West Africa. There are 6 migrations. There's a book written in French. I had it translated, titled Les Chemins du Nil, which means the paths of the Nile, which means the paths that Africans took from East Africa to West Africa, avoiding the onslaught of these Indo-Europeans that are attacking Kemet. And so they're moving across into West Africa. But that's not the first time they moved across. And also West Africans came across to East Africa. There is a lively relationship between East Africa and West Africa. After all, they're the same people. And we have to understand this. And this way, when people come up and start talking about who's not what and who the original Egyptians are, that's nonsense. There's a preponderance of overwhelming evidence that shows that the people that built the pyramids were melanated people, people of pigmentation, African people with curly hair. They've got carvings where they have the kinks up on their head, where they have the braids on the sisters. This is our history. This is our culture. Now, they may attempt to steal it, because after all, they did go in there and they did overcome the people. But look at what they're doing. They didn't produce anything. Every time you see people from the outside coming in and attacking African people, you see the civilization stopping. Nothing good happens after that, because the people that are progressing the civilization have been put under control. Part of the reason why the world is in the predicament it's in today is because of the same thing. And so, family, I just wanted to come to you with this message today. And I want you to understand that the information is out there, the evidence is out there, the books have been written. Civilization or Barbarism by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, my goodness. African Civilization, Myth or Reality, my goodness. And then in 1974, when Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophile Obenga, the great Congolese scholar, and Dr. Diop, the Senegalese scholar, they went up into the UNESCO UN and they tore it apart. Even the people that were trying to argue with them against what they were saying, they say we were not prepared for the mastery of genius of these two scholars. But I pay homage to Dr. Ben, and I thank him for, in his life, taking us to Kemet, to show us for ourselves and to teach us for ourselves. I thank Dr. Asa Hilliard, another ancestor that methodically broke down and showed through overwhelming evidence the Africanness of the builders of the pyramids and the temples in Karnak. It's us. No matter what anybody may say, it's us. Just know that. And build from that. And understand that what we're experiencing now in the Western world is vomit. But in that vomit is the original meal. They vomited it up because they didn't have the intellectual enzymes to digest it. But you do. Study your history. Understand who you are. Know your greatness, but more importantly, own your greatness. Keep on keeping on. It ain't over till we win. Teach the children solar power. It's the future wealth of the planet. Hotep family.